In this presentation, we outline our conceptions of and approaches to innovation as a tool for revitalizing indigenous instrumental traditions. In doing so, we will also highlight the collaborative process rooted in interdisciplinarity and mixed methodologies. In this particular project, we focus on Xhosa musical bows, umrhubhe and uhadi, but draw from Southern African and Diasporic musical bows more broadly. We advocate for emphasizing innovation via personal artistic expression, together with socio-cultural dialogue, in order to sustain these instrumental traditions within contemporary societal contexts. Our desire is to move beyond folkloric repertory models, which tend to replicate static and essentialized notions of tradition. Yet at the same time, we do not want to rely too heavily on genre hybridity or superficial incorporation of modern, quote-unquote, commercial aesthetics. That is to say, we hope to move past preservation while remaining within the general performance aesthetics of acoustic indigenous Southern African instruments. And so we'll now take a moment to share our perspectives as researcher practitioners in order to highlight our shared and contrasting interests and understandings of these cultural practices.
As a bow practitioner and educator, my work focuses on reimagining South African traditional musical bows and adapting them into contemporary performance settings, both in South Africa and abroad. As part of this process, I explore hybrid techniques which appeal to different listeners. At the same time, these techniques should challenge my students to approach the bows both traditionally and experimentally. Therefore, as a young bow player, I am invested in reviving traditional musical practices of the musical bow in current times and ensuring these cultural instruments appeal to a broader audience. However, my concern is that restricting musical practices to historical preservation risks turning traditional musical bows into static symbols. Instead, I use an artistic experimentation and collaborative practice to revitalize traditions as musical practices are constantly evolving. In my view, tradition serves to inspire new creative ideas, just as conventional genres were also shaped by the music of their time.
And myself, as someone who became deeply interested in various African musics as a teenager and young adult, what I found after moving to Cape Town area was encouraging, but in relation to what might be expected in some African contexts, there's room for more variety of performance traditions with indigenous roots. There's a strong tourist sector and what I would describe as a heritage approach, but there is opportunity for more shared creative spaces where indigenous African instruments and traditions are circulating in a polycultural way, which is a way that recognizes intertwined histories and encourages dialogical contributions. I believe in South and Southern African contexts, it is especially important to promote positive examples of cultural interchange amongst individuals and groups through shared participation in face-to-face exchanges, such as through education and live performance. Thus, we suggest being mindful of past and present contextual changes, while also incorporating notions of innovation and personal artistic expression, which we will define now.
In the context of bows, I believe innovation is vital for promoting cultural vitality. Traditional instruments have moved beyond their role as cultural tools and have found their place in non-traditional contexts. Given that music is constantly evolving, I believe it is essential for traditional musical instruments to adapt to the current musical world audiences enjoy today. Therefore, my approach experimentally explores a single stringed instrument and fuses the uhadi's percussive body sounds to accompany conventional string tones in solo and ensemble performances. This innovation was further inspired by my visit to Staatliche Hochschule Spalding in Karlsruhe in Germany, mind my German, during my exchange program where I collaborated with other musicians who played Western instruments and electronic tools. So during an improvisation session, one of the lecturers asked me, what more can you do with the bow beyond just playing 2 notes? Think out of the box, he said. Upon this frustration, I started fiddling by striking the body of the bow, and creative ideas were generated. This experience opened me to a world of the bow that I'd never imagined, and I'd never imagined a single stringed bow was capable of. Moreover, it assured me that traditional instruments can appeal to diverse audiences.
And I found that introducing some restrictions actually helps foster innovation. So in the instance of this creative project, I've set up 2 basic restrictions. One is that the acoustic properties stay intact. So for me, I'm exploring innovation strictly in playing technique with the conventional materials used. The second is my own limitations as a learner of the instrument. So the non-conventional, aka innovative musical directions I take are first guided by past experience and exposure to different traditions. But once I've stalled, once I can't get past a certain level of skill, I go to canonical repertoire and consultation with established practitioners. And I look at this process as active learning rooted in socio-cultural dialogue, which is perhaps just another way of describing socialization or acculturation, which I'll expand on later. But for now, we'll take a moment to briefly share some of the innovations that have emerged from these processes. Technique developed from the traditional uhadi and umakoyane bows for modern performance settings. Unlike traditional bow playing methods, umqakato combines percussive stave, calabash strikes with plucked string tones, creating a groove-based playing style that reimagines the bow's function in solo and ensemble performances. When playing the umakoyane and uhadi bows, umqakato intentionally omits bow strikes, replacing them with either gripping the bowstring to dampen the sound without striking, hitting the bow stave or calabash, or using vocalization to bridge the gap. The unique umqakato technique was developed through continuous experimentation. For example, during improvisation sessions with Dizuplakis, ideas emerged that were never incorporated into bow performances. I felt that highlighting these techniques could encourage more interest, and for these methods to catch on, they should be named. The term umqakato comes from the isiXhosa term for skipping, linking the name to its functional action. Mastering umqakato also involved experimenting with various types of wood that complemented the calabash and the string to achieve a harmonious blend of percussive sound that aligns well with the string tones. Thus, we can see how technology plays a crucial role in revitalizing cultural bow instruments in contemporary stages. The second technique is qungumbini. Qungumbini is a technique that enhances traditional umrhubhe methods. Isiqungu or umcinga in isiXhosa means a stick, while mbini signifies 2 or dual. The technique combines 2 traditional playing systems, one from the Sen and the other Xhosa.
The method introduces a second stick to manipulate the bowstring and employs the tapping technique associated with the sand bow playing style. In contrast, the primary stick bows the string using a friction method parallel to the Xhosa playing umrhubhe. This innovation expands the sonic palette of umrhubhe by integrating rhythmic percussiveness into its overtone-rich textures. Isiqungumbini is not merely an innovation in sound. It also functions as a cross-cultural statement that recognizes and honors the contributions of the San musical traditions to Xhosa bow playing practices. This technique aligns with a broader research question exploring how indigenous innovations expand the expressive potential of traditional instruments while fostering cultural continuity. Therefore, it adopts a hybrid perspective centered on embodied knowledge and acoustic experimentation. It also addresses the need for greater versatility in live performance, enabling musicians to produce a wider range of sound using a single string instrument. Furthermore, this technique has become a pedagogical tool that challenges musicians to master multiple bowing methods simultaneously.
For some of the innovations that I came up with, rooted in different influences and my own sort of restrictions as a player, I've taken a cataloging approach to the various techniques, and they emerge through regular improvised sessions that I use as warm-ups at the beginning of each workday. So I've made a chart that is just a way for me to retrospectively organize the idiosyncrasies within my own, often unorthodox playing, and then kind of get a sense of where those came from guitar techniques or from other styles, slide guitar or other bow styles for Brazil and what have you. So I've just made a series of left-hand techniques, right-hand striking techniques, or different sound effects for both uhadi and umrhubhe. And I use various examples of those in the musical examples that we have today. These technical quirks in my playing probably occurred as a result of growing up outside of Xhosa bow traditions. Thus, my sense of personal artistic expression is also a central part of the larger cultural dialogue involved. My influences with regard to bows are many, coming from Brazil, Malawi, and the Appalachian Mountain area of the US, for instance. None of these really speak directly to my notion of cultural identity in terms of ethnicity or nationality, but rather operate with an aesthetic and ideological context. So, for instance, this is perhaps exemplified by the past bow conferences that were held in Durban in 2016 and 2018, which drew bow practitioners from around the world, African bows, Brazilian bows, and other sort of relatives of those. And while I didn't attend those, I reference these contexts as examples of communities of practice which emphasize a synergy between individual expression and collective practice. I find this framework crucial in fostering revitalization and preservation strategies, again through active learning by socio-cultural dialogue.
My personal artistic expression in my research allows me the freedom to experiment, question, and explore new possibilities while remaining grounded in its traditional practice. My creative process becomes a way of finding my own voice and contribution to my traditional musical practice, and to discover new ways the bow can function in contemporary context. In this sense, innovation does not replace tradition, but emerges through a dialogue between cultural knowledge, personal artistic voice, and contemporary experimentation. For me, revitalization in relation to bows means restoring traditional knowledge and skills of playing, making, and passing cultural heritage to the current generation who may have not had the privilege I had to connect with their traditional tradition through formal and informal education. Furthermore, reimagining traditional bows allowed new creative compositions and performance contexts while maintaining connections to traditional practice. This increasing visibility of the bow in contemporary performance settings and digital spaces without disconnecting it from its origins by merging the past and the present creative ideas.
Hence, our creative pursuits are focused on instrument revitalization through historically and culturally informed innovation. I've used the phrase socio-cultural dialogue in relation to our research pursuits. In a way, one could describe this as deconstructing the process of enculturation or acculturation. I use the idea of socio-cultural dialogue defined as a dialogical approach rooted in convivial scholarship and collaborative artistic research. So for us, these pursuits are inherently interdisciplinary, combining the learning, performing, and teaching of African instruments.
My research and teaching process is shaped by an ongoing cycle of learning, experimenting, reflecting, and teaching. Having worked closely with bow experts like Madosini and Dizu Plakis has allowed me to learn through observation, participation, learning, and embodied experience, which has become a natural way of acquiring knowledge and conducting research. I then reflect on this knowledge and consider how it can be meaningful to my teaching, while students' responses generate further reflection and learning. In this way, research, artistic expression, and pedagogy becomes interconnected processes that contribute to the continued transmission and revitalization of uhadi and umrhubhe knowledge.
So in framing our pursuits as an ongoing cycle of learning, experimenting, reflecting, and teaching, as Thabisa suggests, I believe we are acknowledging the underlying interdisciplinarity and how it may be situated within this larger process of socio-cultural dialogue. Ultimately, we hope that by mapping this process out as we did today, that we might present viable and dynamic paths towards sustainability of indigenous instruments, and that this approach might help build a broader ethos of African cosmopolitanisms in which musical and artistic practice play a fundamental part. Thank you.